Hello YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and this is Outsiders, and today my third review in the series is all about Pathfinder, Paizo Games release, this particular book here. This role-playing game, obviously it's a monster of a book. I don't need to tell people that. Beautiful quality used throughout the book. One of the things that you do notice about it is it's colour plated throughout. It's very nicely done, good index in the front. A lot of thought's gone into this book. What is it really? This is a tricky review because it isn't really a system in its own right, although it is. It's really a player's handbook and a DMG rolled into one, and effectively what they've done is use the open gaming license that affects D&D 3rd edition effectively, and they've built on 3.5 D&D and created this. So in its own right, in the very essence of it, the core of it, is still Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, a game that I've reviewed very highly recently. So it isn't really, although you could say it's a standalone game, it's still in essence D&D. A lot of people refer to this as 3.75. Again, that's a title that's been very heavily banded around there in various reviews, and I wouldn't disagree with that. It makes a lot of sense. It's a bolt-on, really. It's a bolt-on product. I'd say that it builds on what already exists. So in a way, it's not a true... it's very difficult to do a true review of an RPG product like this. But I do like what Paizo... I think either they're called Paizo or Paizo. I'm not really too sure actually how to pronounce it. But I do like what they do. And if you've ever seen some of the material that they produce in their games, which we may review at a later stage, it's absolutely fantastic. So if you get a chance, check them out. I think the book is wonderful. I think the biggest obvious thing that you notice, and this is very true, is that all the character classes have been very souped up. So they've been beefed up in two ways. Every class has been given an overhaul, particularly where there was an issue. Now, in my sort of tips about various classes in 3.5, I'm currently at the point where I've covered off three of the main core classes. None of those really have any issues. However, even in this version, every single one of them again has been beefed up, which is fantastic. And they do it through the class itself, and they also do it through the race you play. Again, there's small tweaks in most cases, but very, very good. Some good examples are the way that they've improved the Paladin. It's unrecognisable from 3.5. The Paladin was always an additional class. It was always something that perhaps you strive towards. It was almost felt to me as if Paladins in 3.5 were lovely. The theory behind them is fantastic, but they really don't stand up as well as they should. They should be a cut above a fighter, but they never were. I think in this version they clearly are. And I do like particularly that's one of the strongest things about this. If anything, if you like 3.5 but weren't sure whether to have this, the nice thing is this is sort of forward and backward compatible, because you could take elements from this and run it in your 3.5 game. Currently, my campaign that I've been running for a while, I've taken a few elements of this and have incorporated in, particularly around the races and the character classes, and in most cases that's fitted very well. It's not particularly, that part of it's not particularly noticeable. None of the characters complain because in most cases it gives them an edge. So for example, hit points have been very evened out, so there's no D4s anymore. It's sort of D6 is the bottom line. Most classes that were using a D6 have been up to a D8. Most that were using a D8 have been up to a D10, and it's pretty much where it sort of pitches itself. So there's several things within this book that work very well together as a whole. So without really getting too fine point of it, what are the differences? You know, that's the tricky part actually. Other than classes and races, the one thing that really bugs me about this 576-page monster is the fact that, you know, none of those areas are highlighted out. You have to read the spells. You've got to be a bit of an expert actually at breaking down the small lines in it. That is so frustrating, because it's so easy to port. You know, there's no issue taking this. You could run this if you've been running 3.5. The next campaign, you could run this as is, but the problem is only the differences will show out over a period of time. It's exactly the same as we found when we went from 3rd edition to 3.5. Some things were really glaringly obvious, and other things we didn't see until we played a few sessions. Now they've also done several things in here around new feats. They've amalgamated some of the skills to make it less, I suppose, less bulky. So they've taken away some of the issues with the various skills to make it play a bit better. So for example, they've got one skill that covers pretty much everything in terms of stealth, pretty much covers all that sort of side of subterfuge. So I do like the way that they've actually tried to streamline it. I do like the way that they've actually looked at the issues were there. They've done some wonderful things around some things that I'm about to be talking about in some of my other review shows, which is things like Mordenkainen's Disjunction, various spells at high level, without a doubt, that have issues. Most of them have been very cleverly looked at, tweaked, and they're very portable. Straight away I could take some of those and put them straight in my game, and they're not too far short of what I was also thinking myself would have to happen for this game to improve. So I think as a review, it's a tricky one to pitch. As a bolt-on, it's fantastic. It definitely puts gives another edge to 3.5. As a standalone product, if this was the first product you had ever picked up from Paizo Games, this was the first RPG you were getting into, I would say exactly like I said about 3.5. This is not an easy system to start with. That's for starters. I mean, 3.5 requires quite a lot of careful consideration. It's not a basic one for a DM to just pick up and play. There's quite a lot of questions you're going to have. Most of it is found on their own websites and other forums that exist. Wizards of the Coast have forums on it. So there's quite a lot of stuff that exists out there to help you, but there's a lot of work involved for DM. And ploughing through 576 pages pretty much tells you, pretty much, as they say over here, it does what it says on the tin. That's a lot of work. So it's not a starting RPG, but it is for people who love that crunch side of the game. Crunch being, as I've already referred to in other reviews, love the maths, loves the min-maxing, love thinking about the characters in that way. Totally the same thing applies from the 3.5 review as it does for this one. So I'm going to be quite simple about this. It definitely improves Dungeons and Dragons. There's no doubt about it. I think it pretty much eradicates most of my fears, but it still has one fundamentally big problem. The prestige classes simply still do not work. So because of that and a few other minor things that still haven't been sorted out, I'm going to improve the score of 3.5 if this is the version you use. And for Paizo's review, I'm going to give it 3.75, which seems very apt somehow. So yeah, I've started to use little pointer systems in the reviews because I think that's only fair to do. So yes, it improves on it. It is a good system. I think as a recap, I think it covers a lot of stuff off that you would want yourself in a game. It bolts on to 3.5 very well and improves it. So for that reason and that reason only, a wonderful addition to the role-playing family is Paizo Games. Anyway, this has been Sean Connors. This is Outsiders. Happy gaming. Until next time. Thank you for your time. Bye.